Creativity seems to require that we keep both of those things working together. It needs a diversity within ourselves of both left brain values as well as right brain values, if we ourselves want to be creative. And that division between those two brains is a very important part of the creative act. Is how it enables our logical, linear, sequential thinking called the left brain to cooperate and feed on those non-linear, non-sequential, imaginative, creative human parts of our right brain. So let's not try to decide we want to be left brain people or right brain people. Let's make up our minds we've got to have both of those brains operating up there and somehow let them work together and help each other, because they desperately need each other. Just as two people need each other only when they're different from each other. The secret of business transactions is to recognize that a good, healthy transaction between individuals is when those two individuals are different enough so that they can each contribute something to a new proposition that neither could do alone. They need each other because they're different. And if we were not different, we would have no need for each other. We need to learn to respect differences. I have a feeling it's an important part of this thing we call love, respecting differences, because we need that other kind of value, attitude, life that we do not have sufficiently in order that we can feed on it. And that's a creative act. So left brain, right brain should be a balancing act. I want to tout a book that I've just received from the Institute of Noetic Sciences, an organization I've been working with in California. Willis Horman and Howard Rheingold have put together a rather remarkable collection of experiences to date in this study of consciousness. And this book is called Higher Creativity. The subtitle is Liberating the Unconscious for Breakthrough Insights. And when we refer to the unconscious, we're talking about those realities within ourselves that we have tended to repress and therefore push them out of our conscious mind, but they're still there, whether from the right brain or left brain. It's those things that we typically don't like about ourselves, but which we need desperately to come to terms with. Psychologists say we project these dimensions of our shadow, which we have repressed, onto other people and make enemies out of them. And we see something or somebody you think you don't like, it's probably something in yourself that you see in them that you don't like. In business, we find the left brain types, the people who seem to have a little more of that kind of stuff going for them, dealing with the world in terms of forecasting. You know, they look at this point, this point, this point, so that point out in the future must be a trend. Extrapolation, they call it. Typically a left brain compulsion. Right brain people tend to look for discontinuities. You know, if we have a point here, here, and here, let's don't just extrapolate and see where we're going. Let's ask the question, do we like that trend? Maybe we want to change it. Stop going up and start going down. Stop going down and start going up. Or deliberately choose to stay even. A conscious choice that it doesn't have to be in the future what it has been in the past. In the World Future Societies, there's a debate raging continually between the extrapolators, the forecasters on the one hand, which is their way of dealing with the future or predicting the future, and the discontinuity, the change makers, who see the future as hopefully different from the past. And so they're trying to figure out what ought to be changed or different. Probably we need both of those people working together and not fighting each other as to who's right. So creativity is probably dealing with the appropriate rate of change or degree of change, how fast change might be appropriate in a given situation. The keepers of the order these left-brain people probably want things to stay pretty much the same much longer. Whereas the change makers, the right-brainers, probably want it to change faster than the rest of us would like to or might be comfortable with. All good teachers will tell you that the challenge of teaching is hitting that happy medium between challenge and frustration. Not too fast, not too slow. If a student is here and you want them to be there, you don't expect them to leap from here to there. You ask, what is the next appropriate increment of learning? The right degree of change. How fast? And this is an art. And you need lots of exchange and feedback by everybody affected as to whether we're moving too fast or too slow. This is a human art, is getting that feedback, being respectful of those other people different from us who want to move more slowly or more rapidly, and finding the balance. That might be what goes on between our two brains, in finding the right balance between our left brain and our right brain. Now, we could talk about a lot of the techniques that have been generated to encourage people to behave along these lines. You've heard of brainstorming, which is a way of suspending judgment. Get the linear thinking mind out of the way and just be as wild as you want to, and nobody will criticize you if you do. We have to deliberately structure these kind of things just to get used to how it feels to act differently or to think differently. And why do we have to go to a program to get people to trick us into being different? We call them growth experiences. Why do we have to be persuaded that we can be different from what we are? And that's what they're out to do, persuade us to be willing to be different. And you can never participate in a creative act unless you're willing to do two things: give up something that you already have and take on something that you don't yet know about. Now, most of us feel that's a little too risky. We're not put together that way. We're keepers of the order. And the order that we're going to keep most dearly is the order within ourselves. And don't ask me to change. Another way of saying, don't ask me to grow. We have to make that judgment for ourselves as we go along. You've heard of De Bono, his lateral thinking. He's saying, don't just think vertically, think laterally. Spread your thinking to other modes of thinking, asking for the same kind of freedom to be different. And then there was a successful company that worked with IBM and a lot of other corporations called synectics. The connecting together of unlike elements. We have learned in business to create task forces along the lines of assuming that you need diverse elements as part of the group with a common goal to hold them together. And goal setting has become organizational thought forms, group affirmation, commonality of purpose has become the crucial executive skill. We now define an executive or a leader as a person who can create and maintain common purpose amongst a group of people. It's a rare skill in our society, and successful executives do that most successfully when they recognize and respect and draw upon the diversity of people in terms of attitudes, competences, and values. Successful executives themselves have a broader range of value options to choose from than most of the rest of us who are not executives. It might be the one thing that makes a person able to be an executive. Have the flexibility of values. And what you run into when you start behaving that way is, you're not behaving right. You ought to do this. The organization says that is the rule to which you conform. An executive is a nonconformist. He's a change maker. So, to summarize, there seems to be three attitudes or values or willingness if we're interested in creativity. One, look for, respect, and feed on diversity, particularly diversity amongst people. Secondly, whenever there's community, common interests, keep looking for the common purpose. Keep redefining it. That is the glue that will hold any group together. When an organization fails, it loses commonality of purpose. Everybody strikes out on their own, with their own objectives and their own purposes. And finally, given those two things, develop the skills of working with systems, complex realities, because there's a lot of diverse elements within it that have to be interrelated. Systems theory and system studies has given us the skills and the attitudes to deal with diversity, provided we can keep a fine balance between the diversity that keeps us separate and unique and the commonness that draws us together as a community. And the skills associated with that are spelled out in books, in courses, and other things we have learned about in relationship to general systems theory. Well, those are the high points out of my own experience of some of the things I've found important in working with organizations and with people interested in being different or being creative.